Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravajakacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravajakacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, so we'll be on page 151 tonight. Yeah, those little sheets. Can you collect the sheets, the song sheets? 3 of them. Thanks. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 22nd day of November 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are studying chapter 3 entitled Karma Yoga, text 13, at the top of page 151. Yagya Shishtasina Santo Muchyante Sarvakil Vishai Bunjate Te Tu Agham papa ye pachanti atmakaranat yagishishtashinaksanto muchyante sarvakilbishai bunjate te tvagam papa ye pachantyatmakaranat yagishishtashinaksanto muchyante sarvakilbishai bunjate te tvagam papa ye pachantyatmakaranat yagishishtashinaksanto muchyante sarvakilbishai bundate te tvagam papa ye pachantyatmakaranat. Chad, try it. Yeah, his name is Chad. Yagishishtashinaksanto muchyante sarvakilbishai bundate tve tvagam papa ye pachantyatmakaranat. Okay, I think we'll go on. Yagishishta, of food taken after performance of yagya. Ashinaha, eaters. Santaha, the devotees. Muchyante, get relief. Sarva, all kinds of kilbishai, from sins. Bunjate, enjoy. Te, they, too, but. Agham, grievous sins. Papa, sinners. Ye, who. Pachanti, prepare food. Atmakaranat, for sense enjoyment. Translation. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. Purport. The devotees of the Supreme Lord, or the persons who are in Krishna consciousness, are called santas, and they are always in love with the Lord as it is described in the Brahma Samhita 538. Premanjanat turita bhakti vilochanena santas sadaiva dudayeshu vilokayanti. The santas, being always in a compact of love with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, the giver of all pleasures, or Mukunda, the giver of liberation, or Krishna, the all-attractive person, cannot accept anything without first offering it to the Supreme Person. Therefore, such devotees always perform yagyas in different modes of devotional service, such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Archanam, etc. And these performances of yagyas keep them always aloof from all kinds of contamination of sinful association in the material world. Others who prepare food for self or sense gratification are not only thieves, but also the eaters of all kinds of sins. How can a person be happy if he is both a thief and sinful? It is not possible. Therefore, in order for people to become happy in all respects, they must be taught to perform the easy process of Sankirtan Yagya in full Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, there can be no peace or happiness in the world. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, where to begin? This is the second chapter, actually the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, but the second chapter of Krishna's instructions. He begins his instructions to Arjuna in chapter 2. And the first lesson that he teaches, which is actually foundational if you're going to understand any of the rest of it, is that we ourselves, in our ultimate identity, are spiritual, meaning that we're pure consciousness. That's who we are. And as we all know, we all have different bodies, but these bodies are temporary, obviously. They are big machines, very complicated, intricate machines. Can only be put together by vast intelligence, divine intelligence. So we're going through each body, and I say each body because that's the first lesson, is that we don't die and we're never born. We are eternal. But we have inhabited different bodies in the past. This is the idea of transmigration, karma and reincarnation. I'm sorry, yeah. And that's central to this philosophy. This is the Vedic philosophy that's come from India from thousands of years. And Krishna is, this Bhagavad Gita is 18 chapters in a very, very long book. It's an excerpt from the chapter, from the book. But it's a self-contained book in and of itself, in that it gives a complete lesson in what we call Upanishadic wisdom, which is the essence of the wisdom of India. And Krishna begins his instruction. Krishna is God. He's become God in the human form. And he's teaching his disciple, Arjuna. It's very dramatic, actually. They're on a battlefield with millions of soldiers on each side. And Arjuna is on the side of righteousness. And the other side is trying to usurp the kingdom for unrighteous purposes. So Krishna, he comes to this world, as he says in the next chapter, to when Dharma becomes confused, when there's too much sin and nonsense going on. You could think, well, maybe he'll come now. we need him. But actually, this movement, Krishna consciousness movement, which has been extant in West and all over the world since 1966, when our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, came. He's the author of this book and many others. And he came with a mission, the same mission that Krishna has, to try to spread pure God consciousness, which he called Krishna consciousness, which actually, what it does is it helps us get closer to our original nature. The Vedas teach, and the Bhagavad Gita teaches, that in our original position in the kingdom of God, we're completely blissful, full of knowledge, and no anxiety. In fact, one of the names of that kingdom of God is Vaikuntha. This is a Sanskrit word that means free from all anxiety. Wouldn't that be a nice place to be? No disease, no old age, no death, and no birth. We've forgotten how painful birth can be. But there's no birth. We're just eternally there in our original form, engaged in a loving relation with God and all others who are there. It's ideal paradise. So they say, well, yeah, that would be nice if something existed, but it sounds like a dream to me. But this, huh? Dreams come true. Yeah, dreams do come true sometimes. But this is not a dream. This is a reality, and there are a whole line of great realized souls. Dreams become reality. How many people have dreamt something and invented it, right? Yeah, sometimes that happens. Yeah, but these descriptions here, what the Vedas teach is that this world is actually like a dream. It's temporary. That's the first thing. It's temporary, and it's not what it seems. What we think. We think that we can have a place of peace and security in this world, but it's impossible. Just by the passage of time, even if you have it all together, you got a good job, bank account, everything, but time will take everything away, split everyone up. We've seen that. And that's in this life, we experience in so many lives. So Krishna is speaking this Bhagavad Gita for Arjuna and for all of us also. And what he's teaching here is the principle of yajna. Of course, the Sanskrit words may be unfamiliar, but it's sacrifice. Meaning that instead of being self-centered, we become God-centered. And we find that if we establish even a little consciousness of God in this world, that we can have a different relationship with everybody. Because every single body is a temple of God. Even the plants, the animals, they also have a soul in there. But the consciousness is very, very rudimentary, as we can see, dog, an ant, But still, there's a soul in there. And they're gradually, they'll die in a few days, how long is their lifespan? And but they'll come up until they come to the human form. The human form is a special opportunity to cultivate this consciousness and end the cycle, what they call samsara. You find that term in Buddhism a lot. Samsara is simply the wheel of birth, old age, disease, and death. Birth, old age, disease, round and round. We want to try to end that, because that is it keeps us in it's kind of a prison. The Sanskrit word, one of the Sanskrit words for this world is Durga, and there's a goddess Durga who is presiding over this. And Durga simply means can't go. It's a word for prison house. And so this world is a prison, but we're imprisoned by our own ignorance and our own desire to enjoy in this world. Yeah, we're not going to be able to lie down on there. Sorry. The idea is that we don't have to stay in this prison. We can transform our consciousness in such a way that this is our last birth, and we can go. Srila Prabhupada, his name is that he had this immortal phrase: "Go back home, back to Godhead, back home, back to Godhead." In other words, we came from there. And we can go back. The techniques, there's a process by which we can transform our consciousness so that when we leave this body, there's no anxiety even in leaving the body. It's just the end. It's like getting out of a car. Or Krishna used the analogy of taking off an old coat and throw it aside, and you enter into a new set of clothes, which in this case will be spiritual. So this verse here talks about actually eating, how to sanctify our eating process. Now, everyone knows, if they know anything about the Hare Krishnas, that we're vegetarians, right? So that's an important part of it, not just to be vegetarian, but what he's saying here, and it's explained in the purport, this is the Prabhupada's explanation, is that when we eat something, we have to recognize that this is a gift of nature, we can understand for sure. But nature is under the control of God. And so to sanctify that eating, we have to prepare it in such a way that it's free of violence. And that's why we are against meat eating with all this slaughtering. It's not necessary. It's a great source of disease, and it's very expensive, and it's ruining the atmosphere. If you study the millions and millions of cattle they have. Oh, it's horrible. Yeah.
Is dairy okay?
Huh?
Is dairy okay?
Well, dairy can be okay if, we have our own farms where we don't slaughter the animals even when they get old and can't give milk. Then that's the best thing. So, milk inherently is not evil, but if it's part of a whole process of tormenting the animals, then it can be, that's it. So we strive for that. We have a little farm up in Escondido. We get, and we have some cows up there. I'm sorry? For the calf. The calf should eat. Yeah. So what do you say? Yagya Shishtashina. Shishtashina means the remnants of yagya. So everything we eat here in the temple is offered on the altar. If you stay past 8:15, you'll see our deity forms, and we'll have a little ceremony.
Buddhism, they offer it.
Huh?
In Buddhism, they offer the food.
Do they do that also? I didn't know that. Yeah. So that's an integral part of our religion, and it becomes prasadam. Prasadam means the grace of the Lord. So it's prepared in the consciousness, this will be offered to God, and it's then offered by a certain simple ceremony, and then honored, we say honor the prasadam, take it. Then it's not binding, it's liberating. It's a sacred act, is partaking of food, because you become Krishna conscious by that. The food, the raw materials have come from Krishna, you prepare them, offer them with love, and he doesn't consume it. Well, we have a kirtan, and which is singing, and that you can sing afterward.
In Buddhism, they have the bang, and everybody's chanting on the other and kill them, and it comes in sync, and it makes it vibrate. Then you're able to eat.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's interesting. Well, that's usually what it is. We have a big kirtan on Sunday, and then there's a little talk, and then we have a feast. That's a prasadam. So yeah, it's a similar thing. So here Krishna is saying that the word santa. Now I can't resist, because I've been doing this for over 50 years. I started in New York back in '73, and oh, you're from Buffalo? I grew up on Long Island, and we joined in the Brooklyn Temple. Yeah. So we would go out at Christmas time. And we had these magazines, and we go on the subways in New York. Well, you know, we were dressed as Santa. And the cops would ask, what are you doing? We said, it's in our book. And here you see the word is Santa is here. Santa is the devotees, you see? We would point to that, because it's the same word. San Diego, Santa Fe, and in Sanskrit the word is Santa. It's the same word. The origin of the word is here. So anyway, he's talking about how the devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice, and that's what I just described. This is part of the yajna. But as Prabhupada will say again and again, he says at the end of this purport, the yajna means a sacrifice that you perform. It can be very elaborate, it can be very simple. In this age, the sacrifice is very simple and joyful and very, very powerful. And that is sankirtan. Sankirtan means getting together and singing this mantra, I'll probably be leading. So you listen to me singing, and then I stop, and then you sing, and we play. Yeah. Oh, you mean the little chanting of the mantra? Yeah. Well, this is if you'll be able to read that. Yeah. Okay. So that's the main one to read. That's the main one to read. So that'll happen at 8:15. But that's is the most important yajna. Is just what's the sacrifice? You sacrifice a little time. You sing. You may get a little hoarse throat. It's not much of a sacrifice, but the benefits are enormous. Even just chanting one mantra, one name, this Krishna, eradicates lifetimes of sin. This is
just 3 days ago. I seen the concert of George Harrison.
Oh, really? Was that a movie or something? Yeah. Yeah. Well, he was a big friend of this movement. He was. George Harrison was a big friend of the movement.
That's what got me to thinking about Holy Krishna.
Oh, nice. Okay, so this verse talks about the importance of eating sanctified food, basically, and if you don't, then you accumulate sin. The word agham means sin, or papa means sin, and then that can accrue, and then at the next life you can suffer even more. So we want to know the art and science of Krishna consciousness, and now he's going to talk about how just having successful farming activities depends on the rain. Where does the rain come from? Ultimately, it comes from the blessing of God. So we have to perform yajna. All right, let's do the next one. Now this will be just one time. I'll chant. Annad bhavanti bhutani parjanyad annasambhavaha yagyad bhavati parjanyo yagya karma samudbhavaha. All living beings, all living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yajna, or sacrifice, and yajna is born of prescribed duties. Purport: Srila Baladeva Vidyabhushan, a great commentator on the Bhagavad Gita, writes as follows. All right, I'm going to skip all the Sanskrit because I don't know what it means, and I'm sure you don't know what it means, and it's going to be hard for me to pronounce. So I'll just go to the English. The Supreme Lord, who is known as the Yajna Purush, or the personal beneficiary of all sacrifices, is the master of all the demigods, who serve him as the different limbs of the body serve the whole. Demigods like Indra, Chandra, and Varuna are appointed officers who manage material affairs. And the Vedas direct sacrifices to satisfy these demigods so that they may be pleased to supply air, light, and water sufficiently to produce food grains. When Lord Krishna is worshipped, the demigods, who are different limbs of the Lord, are also automatically worshipped. Therefore, there is no separate need to worship the demigods. For this reason, the devotees of the Lord, who are in Krishna consciousness, offer food to Krishna and then eat, a process which nourishes the body spiritually. By such action, not only are past sinful reactions in the body vanquished, but the body becomes immunized to all contamination of material nature. When there is an epidemic disease, an antiseptic vaccine protects a person from the attack of such an epidemic. Similarly, food offered to Lord Vishnu and then taken by us makes us sufficiently resistant to material affection. And one who is accustomed to this practice is called a devotee of the Lord. Therefore, a person in Krishna consciousness who eats only food offered to Krishna can counteract all reactions of past material infections, which are impediments to the progress of self-realization. On the other hand, one who does not do so continues to increase the volume of sinful action, and this prepares the next body to resemble hogs and dogs, to suffer the resultant reactions of all sins. The material world is full of contaminations, and one who is immunized by accepting prasadam of the Lord, food offered to Vishnu, is saved from the attack, whereas one who does not do so becomes subjected to contamination. Food grains or vegetables are factually eatables. The human being eats different kinds of food grains, vegetables, fruits, etc., and the animals eat the refuse of the food grains and vegetables, grass, plants, etc. Human beings who are accustomed to eating meat and flesh must also depend on the production of vegetation in order to eat the animals. Therefore, ultimately, we have to depend on the production of the field and not on the production of big factories. The field production is due to sufficient rain from the sky, and such rains are controlled by demigods like Indra, sun, moon, etc., and they are all servants of the Lord. The Lord can be satisfied by sacrifices. Therefore, one who cannot perform them will find himself in scarcity. That is the law of nature. Yajna, specifically the Sankirtan Yajna prescribed for this age, must therefore be performed to save us at least from scarcity of food supply. And there are instances, these are historic instances, where in India there was a drought. It hadn't rained in Hyderabad for a long time. And Srila Prabhupada was then traveling around India with some devotees and doing Sankirtan and preaching. And so he sent the devotees out in Hyderabad. After a few times, the rains came. It rained there. There are various miracles like that that will create tremendous irregularities in society. And we'll have so many millions of climate migrants trying to, Yeah, more and more. Yeah, it's artificial. So the Krishna is giving these basic principles. The title of this chapter is Karma Yoga, and karma means different things in different contexts. I'm sure it's an English word by now, right? Bad karma, good karma, what goes around comes around. Right? We know that. But karma in its bare form just means activity, action that you perform with the senses. But there's different kinds of karma. There's vikarma. Vikarma means activities that are inherently damaging to others, or that are selfish. And there's a reaction for those, and those are suffering in your next life, or even in this life. And so, but then there's also akarma. Akarma is activity that has no bad reaction or good reaction. It's simply activity that you're performing as devotional service for Krishna. It has the best result, which is that it clears your whole karma background. Because even if you have good karma, it means you have to take birth again to get the good result. And then who knows what will happen on that birth. You may get sucked into acting sinfully. So it's best to learn how to act in this life without any karmic reaction. And that way clearing our way for not coming back in the next life, going back to Godhead. And that will be in subsequent chapters of the book. They'll be teaching in very great detail. But suffice it to say that we should know that our activities are, first of all, we can't do anything without the blessings or the help of the demigods. There's an air god, there's a sun god, there's a water god. All these elements are under control of higher beings. Now we don't see how that works, but it happens. But it's true. And so if we want to live peacefully and happily, even on this world, then we have to recognize the authority. And what's wonderful, we don't have to worry about all these gods. If we just worship the one God, the supreme God, everything's taken care of. Because they're afraid of serving Him. If He's pleased with us and He sees us, then everything will be fine. But that is going to take some education, and that's why our spiritual master took pains to write so many books. This is like perhaps the most foundational book, Bhagavad Gita, basic book. But there's also an 18-volume book called the Bhagavad Purana, which we study every morning, which basically goes into these themes but deals in much more detail. And the basic idea is that our consciousness is what will determine our fate, our future. And the principle is that everything we do affects our consciousness one way or another. And so the ideal is that when we leave this body, we're able to remember God. We think of it, that principle is spoken of explicitly in the 8th chapter. Antakale chamameva smaran mukta kalevanam yak priyati samadbhavam yastinatra sankhya. This is one of the verses in the 8th chapter. And he says very simply there, Antakale literally means the end time, when the end comes for this body. If one can remember me, then one will come to me. You see? One will come to me in the spiritual world and won't have to take birth again. That's going home back to Godhead. So it all depends on cultivating that consciousness of Krishna so we can see Him in everything. We can see Him in all our activities, and we're consciously remembering. And this chant, which is a wonderful way to remember Krishna and to become purified. It's central to the process. And it's much easier. In the 6th chapter, Krishna will describe the classic yoga process, where you sit, you go alone, and you practice the breathing, and you pour, and it's very, I used to practice that. But, half an hour a day, something you can't, but really you have to be able to meditate that for hours and hours and hours. And it's practically impossible. Even Arjuna says, I can't do it. Chanchalam himana Krishna. My mind is like a hurricane. There's no way I can control it with this kind of process. And so Krishna says, yes, it's difficult, but it's possible with practice. So Arjuna says, okay, but what if I fail? So then you say, well, you take birth in a very pious family or a family of yogis, and you can continue in your next life. So Arjuna is not very hopeful that he can succeed. So at the end of that chapter 6, Krishna says, basically, don't worry, he says, Yoginam api sarvesham, of all the yogis, those who are always thinking of me with love and devotion, and who are dedicated to me, they're the best yogis. Because Krishna is the Yogeshwara, he's the master of all yogas. So Arjuna is relieved because he's the best friends with Krishna. But the point is that in this age, Krishna has made it very practical. He's come in another form. He's come in a form called Lord Chaitanya. Chaitanya, and it's quite wonderful because he doesn't have he doesn't manifest the great powers that Krishna had. He's the one who started this chanting and dancing. He's the one who made this mantra popular about 500 years ago in India. And he went all over India chanting and dancing, doing and making many bhaktas, many devotees. So this process is easy and practicable for us. Chanting in music and dance together, and also chanting individually, like the prayer beads that the Christians use, right? I don't know if you ever, yeah, the Catholics especially. So we have those also. I don't have mine with me here, but they're called japa beads, not prayer beads. You have? Oh, put them on the wrist. So when we get initiated, means when we are confirmed in the red religion, then we vow to chant 16 rounds a day on those beads. It takes about 2 hours. And if you come here at 5:15, you'll see some devotees here. Some are chanting elsewhere. They have the beads. You can Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And you just try to absorb your mind in the sound, and it's a transcendental experience. Anyone who does it seriously, whoa, that's a powerful mantra. It's called the Maha Mantra. It's the greatest mantra, and it's free, completely free. You don't have to pay anything. So that's our central practice, and it connects us to Krishna through sound, and it's very purifying. It eradicates your karma, and you get a transcendental pleasure. There's like a whole ocean of pleasure that we've lost touch with in our own hearts. It's not something that you have to buy or from outside. It's inside, and we all have it because God is in there. We just have to learn the art and science of accessing that consciousness. All right, we have time for one more. So he's continuing from text 14 about this, how we can subsist by sacrifice and the rains will come and everything. Karma brahmodbhavam vidhi brahmakshara samudbhavam tasmat savakatam brahma nityam yagye pratishtitam. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. Purport: Yagyartha karma, or the necessity of work for the satisfaction of Krishna only, is more expressly stated in this verse. If we have to work for the satisfaction of the Yagya Purush, Vishnu, then we must find out the directions for work in Brahma, or the Transcendental Vedas. The Vedas are therefore codes of working directions. Anything performed without the direction of the Vedas is called vikarma, or unauthorized or sinful work. Therefore, one should always take direction from the Vedas to be saved from the reaction of work. As one has to work in ordinary life by the direction of the state, one similarly has to work under direction of the supreme state of the Lord. Such directions in the Vedas are directly manifested from the breathing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said, Asya mahato bhutasya nishvasitam etad yad rig vedo yajurveda samavedo tarvangirasa. The four Vedas, namely Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda, are all emanations from the breathing of the great personality of Godhead. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 4.5.11. The Lord, being omnipotent, can speak by breathing air, for as it is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, the Lord has the omnipotence to perform through each of his senses the actions of all other senses. In other words, the Lord can speak through his breathing, and he can impregnate by his eyes. In fact, it is said that he glanced over material nature and thus fathered all living entities. After creating or impregnating the conditioned souls into the womb of material nature, he gave his directions in the Vedic wisdom as to how such conditioned souls can return home, back to Godhead. We should always remember that the conditioned souls in material nature are all eager for material enjoyment, but the Vedic directions are so made that one can satisfy one's perverted desires, then return to Godhead, having finished his so-called enjoyment. It is a chance for the conditioned soul to attain liberation. Therefore, the conditioned souls must try to follow the process of yajna, or sacrifice, by becoming Krishna conscious. Even those who have not followed the Vedic injunctions may adopt the principles of Krishna consciousness, and that will take the place of performance of Vedic yajnas or karma. So this is an important point, is that Krishna is speaking about these different Vedic sacrifices that one can perform for purification and for making progress and returning back to Godhead. But Prabhupada is saying that the process of Krishna consciousness, as taught in this school of transcendence, obviates the need for learning all these complicated yajnas. It's not necessary. You know, the great gift that Prabhupada gave, perhaps his greatest gift, was taking this mysterious science and translating it into English. These basic books like Bhagavad Gita. Huh? Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. You can take the book, put it up on the shelf. That's it. Good. So Krishna wants us to come back, but he knows we have so many disqualifications in this age. It's not a great age, this Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga, there's different ages, they're like seasons. And this is the final in this cycle of 4. And the word Kali in Sanskrit means quarrel, it means conflict. This is the age of conflict. I remember when I first started reading the newspaper, I was probably 6 or 7 years old, back in the late 50s, early 60s. And I became interested in what was going on in the world, naturally. And I cannot remember a time when there wasn't some war or some threat of war that was going on. the Vietnam War was going on, and of course, I didn't know about the Korean War, which was going on while I was alive, but that preceded it. And now we got two wars going on. This is the age of Kali, and even within society, like in America, so many guns and craziness. People just walking into schools and walking in here and shooting up. It's madness. So it's a difficult age, but to counteract that difficulty, the process has been made very simple. Lord Chaitanya came and he basically said, just chant this mantra and dance with me for a while. And then when you get tired, take some sanctified food, that we call the prasadam, and then after a while, and hear about Krishna, and then when you get some more energy, we can do some more dancing. What's not to like, And there were so many festivals, like we had this, we used to do every year, the Ratha Yatra. A Ratha is a cart, and we have these deity forms that we put on the cart, and we have a big festival. You remember that for years, I don't know if you're from San Diego, but they had around Earth Day. You go down in the park. We go every year, and with that park, we'd have our little Ratha Yatra. Ratha means the cart, and chanting and dancing. And then we go back to our site and we chant the rest of the day. And we had book tables and people would come up and we had prasadam and everything. Very wonderful. But now they stopped that festival in the park because whatever, COVID knocked it out, whatever. So we're going to have, I think, a little thing on the Garnett Street. They're going to do something, yeah. But the idea is that it's very celebratory. It's not, the austerities are there, but they're pretty minor compared to even what Krishna described in the 6th chapter. What to speak of the Yoga Sutras, it's impossible. It may be possible for very few to make advancement, but it's not necessary. What's necessary is linking up to Krishna, and this mantra helps us do that very easily. And after, that's central to it. But then there's all of these other things like the deity worship and the festivals and like that. So it's very practical. That's what I'm saying, and it's scientific. It works. I mean, I've been doing it for 50 years, and I didn't think, oh my God, I've been doing this for 25 years. I don't know. Maybe I should try something else. Never came up. It's always been a very joyful and blissful experience. And I'll be 76 next month. Yeah, and it's not like I say, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that. Nope, Yeah, and every morning, you get up at. I've been getting up at. To be honest, this is new for me. It used to be 2:45. Now I'm back to 2:20 in the morning, and we have our first program at 4:30, and it's very wonderful. We worship, huh? From about 9 o'clock to 2:20. Yeah. So yeah, it's I don't get as much sleep as others, but yeah, it works for me. I probably should try to get a little more, get a little earlier, but it's hard when I do these classes and to get back before 9. So anyway, it's I recommend you should try it. You pick up a book. We have these small books that are very introductory books. This book is kind of advanced. It's best if you have a class, someone who you can ask questions. But it's wonderful. All right, let's do one more. Text 16. Evam pravartitam chakram nanuvartayati yaha agayor indriyaramo mogang partha chajivati. My dear Arjun, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice thus established by the Vedas certainly leads a life full of sin. Living only for the satisfaction of the senses, such a person lives in vain. Purport: the mammonist philosophy of, quote, work very hard and enjoy sense gratification is condemned herein by the Lord. Therefore, for those who want to enjoy this material world, the above-mentioned cycle of performing yajnas is absolutely necessary. One who does not follow such regulations is living a very risky life, being condemned more and more. By nature's law, this human form of life is specifically meant for self-realization in either of the three ways, namely karma yoga, jnana yoga, or bhakti yoga. There is no necessity of rigidly following the performances of the prescribed yajnas for the transcendentalists who are above vice and virtue, but those who are engaged in sense gratification require purification by the above-mentioned cycle of yajna performances. There are different kinds of activities. Those who are not Krishna conscious are certainly engaged in sensory consciousness. Therefore, they need to execute pious work. The yajna system is planned in such a way that sensory conscious persons may satisfy their desires without becoming entangled in the reaction of sense gratificatory work. The prosperity of the world depends not on our own efforts, but on the background arrangement of the Supreme Lord, directly carried out by the demigods. Therefore, the yajnas are directly aimed at the particular demigods mentioned in the Vedas. Indirectly, it is the practice of Krishna consciousness, because when one masters the performance of yajnas, one is sure to become Krishna conscious. But if by performing yajnas one does not become Krishna conscious, such principles are counted as only moral codes. One should not therefore limit his progress only to the point of moral codes, but should transcend them to attain Krishna consciousness. So this is a chakra. A chakra is a cycle. The idea is that, as Krishna mentioned earlier, if you perform these sacrifices to the demigods, then they'll send sufficient rain and everything, and there'll be and you'll produce grains, and with the grains you perform more sacrifice like that. But Krishna consciousness is, there's no time for us to do that, and in this life and in this place. We need to perform that sacrifice which will most quickly take us back to Godhead, and that's this congregational chanting of the holy name. So that we'll see as this book goes on that there are places where he condemns the worship of the demigods. He says, don't get distracted by that.
Well, I appreciate you letting me. I got to go to my grandmother.
Take okay. Sure. You're always welcome. Sure. Hare Krishna.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean that in disrespect. I misquoted that name. No, I just correcting it.
So anyway, Hare Krishna. Oh, you taking off? I guess you all have to go, huh?
Yeah, he's got a car.
Okay. Anyway, even a little advancement on this path protects one from the greatest danger.
Doesn't HARP control the weather too?
Who?
HARP?
HARP. What's HARP? Oh, you mean the thing in Alaska?
Yeah.
No. Krishna's controlling the weather. Just chant Hare Krishna.
What control? There was a tropical storm in Acapulco, and in a matter of hours it turned into Category 5.
I know. I read that. Incredible. So
I don't know. It could be hard.
it's bad karma. All right. Take care. Drive carefully. Haribol. Unusual visitation. Okay, it's 8:04. Let's do one more. Yes, tvatmanadadeva syad. Atma triptas chamanavaha. Atmaneva cha santushtas. Tasya karyam navidyate. Okay, so now after all of this sacrifice, the demigods, the cycle is now he's saying, but for one who takes pleasure in the self, capital S self, that's Krishna, whose human life is one of self-realization, and who is satisfied in the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty, no material duty. Purport: a person who is fully Krishna conscious and is fully satisfied by his acts in Krishna consciousness no longer has any duty to perform vis-a-vis the demigods. Due to his being Krishna conscious, all impiety within is instantly cleansed, an effect of many, many thousands of yoga performances. By such clearing of consciousness, one becomes fully confident of his eternal position in relationship with the Supreme. His duty thus becomes, now he has transcendental duty. His duty thus becomes self-illuminated by the grace of the Lord, and therefore he no longer has any obligations to the Vedic injunctions. Such a Krishna conscious person is no longer interested in material activities and no longer takes pleasure in material arrangements like wine, women, and similar infatuations. So that's back to this verse that we quoted, I think, earlier in the chapter when we were studying some of the verses. Yata taro mula nishechanena tripyanti tatskanda bujo pashaka prano pahara chayatindriyanam tataiva sarvahana machuteja. Just as by watering the root of the tree, the whole tree is nourished, branches, the leaves, the buds, everything, the fruits. And by putting food in the stomach, the whole body becomes energized, right? Similarly, by worshiping Krishna, all the demigods become pleased. In other words, they fall into line and everything. You know, you don't have to worry about them. And that's shown by this Govardhan Puja. That's the lesson there. You don't have to worship Indra separately. And if he tries to do something, you know, he'll be humiliated, you know. So that's, you know, and we have examples in the reign of Yudhishthira and the reign of other, you know, Parikshit and other great kings, that nature cooperated. Because here's a great king who's, you know, a wonderful devotee of the Lord and leading the society according to the rules and regulations of the Vedas and everything. And so they cooperate because it's all under vast control. But here we have a perfect example in this Kali Yuga of they're not cooperating, you know, because we're nonsense. You know, all these fossil fuels burning for what, you know? I mean, it's an artificial society. And so it becomes hell on earth. It can become so hellish. We should always remember that eventually this whole universe is destroyed. And how is it destroyed? Through flood and fire. Isn't that what we got now? Flood and fire. It's already happening. So, I mean, it's not due to come to an end right now, but we can see that by ignoring these rules and simply living a hedonistic life is very, very risky, individually and for society to be based on that. It's just a suicide. And I mean, you know, I don't relish telling this, but I periodically do it because it's part of the history of the last 50 years or more. Now, it's more than 50 years. And that is how close we've come. I have this one site, Close Calls, you know, like I almost had the hydrogen bomb war. There was one Russian guy who was honored in America, in, I forget, 10 years ago or something. And back in the 70s, he was in a bunker, you know, and there was radar and the Russians were monitoring and everything. And it looked like the Americans had just set off a whole bunch of intercontinental ballistic missiles. That's what the screen said. And if he had just made a phone call to the military headquarters and said, well, this is what I'm seeing on my screen, said, okay, let's get the missiles ready. And they would have fired him. But he didn't do that because it didn't make any sense, you know. So he double-checked and checked, and sure enough, it was a computer glitch. Computer glitch. It almost set off World War III. And the Cuban Missile Crisis, that was the closest call we had. You know, I've told this story before, how, you know, I mean, I was a witness to it. I remember distinctly, you know, forget that. I was 14 years old. And, you know, the Russians and Cuba, they had their outposts there. You know, they were allies, Fidel Castro, communists. So that was, you know, a thorn in the side of America. Then we found out through surveillance that because we were planning an invasion, they knew that, and so they said, well, the only way to deter that is by having nuclear weapons here, and they convinced Russia to help them put them there. So they installed these, you know, they was in the process of installing more, but they were already somewhere there. And so we said, well, there's only, you know, our military was saying, well, we gotta, you know, invade, you know. But that was just what it was there to prevent, because they would have shoot them off. So anyway, it got very, very tense. And the Russians sent a whole flotilla of ships, and the Americans had blockaded Cuba, more or less. So then they came up and said, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? So nothing happened. The ship stopped. But they also had below a flotilla of submarines, and some, at least one of them or more, was armed with nuclear-tipped torpedoes. Great. So we didn't know that, and but we wanted them to surface, you know, and so we called Moscow and said, we're going to send down these depth charges. You've seen the movies where you send down the depth charges; they blow up, you know. And if you send them down in a certain way, they can wreck the submarine. Well, we didn't want to wreck the submarine. We just wanted to alarm them so that they would surface. So we told Russia, but they didn't have any way to really communicate with the submarines then, you know. So the depth charges started coming, and that for the guys in the submarine, saying, well, the war has started. World War III has started, so let's shoot these missiles we got in here. And they had two commanders of it. They both agreed, but on that submarine was the admiral of the whole fleet. And he said, no, it doesn't make any sense, you know. Let's just surface. And they surfaced, there's no war going on. We came within seconds. If they had shot those and sunk one of our aircraft carriers, that would have been, it would have been all over, all over. So, and now, you know, you got the war going on in Ukraine and they're threatening nuclear. I'm telling you, you know, how many times can we luck out in this world? So we got to be ready, you know, to go with it. If we get those sirens going or whatever, the alarms they have now is on your phones, right? Is that what it's called? I thought that was for some kid who's missing. That's just... Anyway, it's getting late, so let's all glory.